something. I'll give you that. Now, all or none response. All or none response is this. This is very similar to firing a bullet in a gun. Okay? You pull the trigger, the bullet's flying out at the same speed, same intensity every time. Once, simply, alright, the energy exceeds the threshold, that neuron's fired. And it's going to fire the same time, same way, every single time. There is no partial, response. There is no half response. It either fires or it doesn't fire. And that's where it comes from. All or none. Either fires all the way or it doesn't fire at all. Now, agonist and antagonist are going to be two examples. I'm not going to be asking you definitions. I pretty much have rolled